So our agenda is simple. In order to be effective communicator, regardless if it's planned or spontaneous, you need to have your anxiety under control. So we'll start there. Second, what we're going to talk about is some ground rules for the activity we have today, and finally, we're going to get into the heart of the activity that I said, and I invite you to participate. So let's get started with anxiety management. 85% of people tell us that they are nervous with speaking in front of people. And I think 50% are lying. Okay, we could create a situations when we could make them nervous too. In fact, just the past week, a study from Chapman University asked American what are the thing you're most scared and among being caught in a surprise terrorist attack. Having your identity stolen with public speaking. Among the top five was speaking in front of others. This is a ubiquitous fear and one that I believe that we're concerned to manage. And I use that word manage very carefully because I don't think we have everyone to overcome that. Anxiety actually have it. It's give it energy, have us focus, tell us what to important, but we want to learn to manage it. So we would like to introduce you to a few technique that based on academic research. But before we get there, I would love to ask you, what is this feel like when you're sitting in the audience watching a nervous speaker present? How do you feel? Just sound a feeling. How do you feel? Uncomfortable. I heard many of you going, yes, uncomfortable. It's very awkward, doesn't it? So what do we do? Now, a couple of you probably like watching somebody suffer. Okay, but most of us don't. So what do? We sit there and we nod and we smile or we disengage. And to the nervous speaker looking out here, he's on audience, see a bunch of people nodding or disagree. It does not help. Okay, so we need to manage our anxiety. It's fundamentally your job as communicator, rather regardless of the plans or spontaneous, is to make your audience comfortable. Because if they're comfortable, they can receive your message. And when I say comfortable, I'm not referring to the fact that your message has to be sugar coated or nice to hear. It could be a harsh message, but they have to be in play where they can receive it. To have your audience feel comfortable, we do that by managing our anxiety. So let me introduce you to a few techniques that I think you can write away to have you feel more comfortable. The first had to do is when you feel to anxiety symptoms. For most people, they haven't. In the initial minutes prior to speaking, in this situation, what happened is many years begin to feel whatever it is. Maybe your stomach get a little girly, maybe your leg began to shake and you began to press right. When you start to ask, oh my goodness, I'm nervous. Oh, they're gonna tell I'm nervous and it's not gonna go well, and we start spiraling out of control. So research on mindful attention tell us that if we begin to feel those anxiety symptoms, we simply grit our anxiety and say, hey, this is me feeling nervous, I'm about to do something of consequence. And simply by creating your anxiety and acknowledging it's normal and natural. 85% of people tell us they have it. You absolutely can stem the tide of anxiety spiraling out of control. It's not necessarily going to reduce the anxiety, but it will stop it from spinning out. So the next time you begin to feel the anxiety side, take a deep breath and say, this is me feeling anxious. I noticed a few of you taking some note. There's a handout that will come at the end. And everything that I'm supposed to say, okay? Can't warranty I'm gonna say, but you have it there. In addition to this approach, the technique was very well. And it's a technique that I have to do some research on way back when I worked in graduate school. Most of us, when we are presenting, planned or spontaneous, we feel that we have to do it right, and we feel that we are performing. How many of you have ever acted singing or dancing? I'm not going to ask for performance now, okay? Many of you have, so we should note that. You could do it next year, maybe a talent show album. It looks like we got talent there. That's great. So when you perform, you know that there is a right way or wrong way to do it. If you hit the right note and you like, and at the right time, at the right place, you made a mistake, it's messed up the people. The audience says it's messed up the people. And when you present, there is no right way. It's certainly better the worst way, but there's no one right way. So when you need to presenting as something than to performance, I would like to suggest that we need to use other conversations. Right now, I'm having a conversation with 100 people rather than I'm performing for you. But it's not enough just to say, this is a conversation. I want to give you a concrete thing you can do. First, start with questions. Questions, by the very nature and logics, they are two-way. That was one of the very first thing I do here for you. Had to count the number and raise your hands that ask you a question that give your audiences involved and makes them feel near to the presenter in conversations. So your questions, they can be rhetorical, they can be polling, or actually want to hear information from you. In fact, I use questions when I create an outline for my presentation. Rather than writing bullet point, I list questions that I'm going to answer, and that put me in the conversational mode. And if you look to my note for today's talk, you see a series of questions. When I'm answering the questions, how do we manage our anxiety?